The skin quality, I think, is one of the most important things you should look at when deciding on that kind of product.
That's a big issue in the industry right now. You hear all of these horror stories of people using breast filler, bum filler, even hip dip filler. A lot of it has a really bad name.
Certainly blurring between the lines, I think, and it's just making sure that you're offering the full suite of treatments available.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Aesthetic Edge. Today we have a really interesting guest who's going to give us a different perspective from what we're used to. We've heard from practitioners, we've heard from trainers, and we've even heard from some of our students. But what we want to hear from today is the pharmacy's perspective on the aesthetics industry. Today I have John Campbell, who is the UK and Ireland head, who's joining us today. He's going to give us a little bit of that perspective. John, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. Why don't we start off by you telling us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I'm John Campbell, country head for Sinclair. So been at Sinclair nearly on 2 years now, managing their sort of commercial operations, that's sales and marketing function really of Sinclair's. But I've been in medical aesthetics since 2008. So that's almost 17-ish years now. So worked across many different companies. So it was Sanofi at the time with a product called Sinclair, Mert, worked with a VC light company as well, before spending 10 years at Allergan across different roles. So yeah, sort of live and breathe medical aesthetics. Find it fascinating as well.
Absolutely. So you're very experienced in the sector. Why is it you chose Sinclair of all companies to work with?
I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I think, when you look at a company to work for, you do need to make sure that they do have good products, which Sinclair definitely do. We've also got a very broad product portfolio as well, which makes them really exciting. But for me, I always think about the people, great people with Amber Edwards as our CEO, is a real true leader. And essentially just where it can go in the future as well. I think that's also an important aspect.
You brought up an interesting point in terms of being aware of good products. And obviously there's a lot of different products out there. My first question, I really want to delve into the products, but my first question is, which product or products in the industry do you feel like has the best chance of growing? What's going to do really well in 2025?
Obviously, there's a large trend towards regenerative medicine, so there's not 100% clarity over what does that mean, which products sort of relate to that, because it encompasses a broad range of product portfolios that we have. I think HAs, hyaluronic acids, are still the market leader and still will be. So I know there has been a trend towards like polynucleotides and exomes, which is probably more driven through consumer demand. So I still believe that HA and hyaluronic acid have a strong place for it, but also products like Elance, which is a biostimulating collagen filler, and our La Luma, so PLLA products are still certainly the most popular requested treatments.
Tell us a little bit more about those products. I think our listeners will find them very interesting.
Yeah, it's really just understanding which product is best for which patient and what their aesthetic goals really are. So we have obviously the HAs, but Elance has been around for about 14 years. So again, loads of clinical evidence behind it, but essentially it creates the volumization through, and it encompasses a PCL, so polycapillary spheres.
Okay.
So the collagen, as the filler element sort of winds down, the collagen is replaced. So you get a nice natural result over the 18 months of that. And whereas the PLLA is essentially, you don't get the instant volumization, but the collagen builds up over time. So you start to see results up to 3 to 6 months.
Okay, so I'm familiar with Harmonica, which works in a sort of similar way, where you get the immediate hydration of the hyaluronic acid, but then also the calcium hydroxyapatite helps stimulate collagen over long term. Would you say it's sort of similar to that?
In the Elance category, yes. But both the carrier gel and the spheres are different. But in the concept of the conversation, yes, they are in similar categories to that.
And which would you say is I know it's a difficult question, but a better product?
I think better is always a harder regulatory term. So I think it's really kind of looking at what are the best patient outcomes. So the skin quality, I think, is one of the most important things you should look at when deciding on that kind of product. The clinical evidence and results, I think, are the key aspects. But I'd say the gel carrier, as I say, is different. So it's using hyaluronic acid, whereas ours is using a different gel carrier. So I think it depends.
Okay. And Elance, where exactly are we placing? So you said it has a volumization effect, so I assume it's not going into the skin. Is it going just underneath the skin, subcutaneous space?
It is, yeah. So essentially it's kind of more of a fanning technique to create the volumization, but also improving the skin quality as well.
Wonderful. So definitely something to be aware of, Elance. You mentioned another one as well, Elance, and one other product.
It was La Luma.
La Luma.
So that is a PLLA product. So again, it comes in both 2 vial sizes, so one for body and one for face, essentially. So La Luma is used sort of within the face, but also hip dips, body and body contouring as well, which has its licensed indications for those.
Very interesting, yeah. Definitely want to be looking at, because hip dips and all of these sort of body fillers, they're definitely rising in popularity as well, aren't they?
It is, and it's obviously not using a HA, so it's using your own collagen to create those shapes. And the contours as well, so you get that sort of improved longevity, and so it's got a safer profile than most of the other products.
That's a big issue in the industry right now. You hear all of these horror stories of people using, breast filler, bum filler, even hip dip filler. And a lot of it has a really bad name because you can see some nasty complications from that. What makes you more confident in the products that you're using that they won't cause these horrible side effects?
Yeah, so if you think about this, I think the way we've seen those BBL kind of cases, they're using hyaluronic acid. Also, the practitioners, the level of quality of the training, the facilities, is it aseptic? So there's a lot to unpack. You probably have a whole podcast on the question itself. So I think the fact that our practitioners are doctor, dentist and nurse using the product firstly, so they're appropriately trained, qualified in a safe, clean venue. And also from our side as a manufacturer, I think it's really important that we make sure that people are appropriately trained as well. So when we're choosing a partner to work with to train in these indications, that we're investing the right level of training into that clinic.
Interesting. Now, in terms of being the country head, I assume that involves a lot of commercial goals that you have to reach, dealing with profits and losses. It must be quite difficult to find a product that does the work, but also has a relatively low risk ratio. How do you go through this process to find the right products for Sinclair?
Yeah, I think some of our products are more advanced. So therefore there is a more of a cost towards the education and training and support that's needed. So I kind of think when we look at these kind of things, I think it's making sure that we work with the right clinic who have the opportunity to take the product on board and the right level of support. So I think going back to the original question, what products would we choose? I think we are looking for more at the clinical outcome. You need a product that is going to work, but the support is also needed in clinical education training, but also we need to be able to support a practitioner, educate the patients as well. I think that's really important when you're looking at a product, not only to choose it for its clinical outcome, but also the end consumer is really important in that decision as well.
Okay, so there's a lot of pharmacies out there, obviously, and a lot of them will do what you do, trying to find the best product for their patients that have a low risk profile. What does Sinclair do differently that sets them apart from other pharmacies out there?
With the kind of manufacturer on that aspect. So what sets us apart, I think, is choosing good, safe, ethical products, but also good education, training, support. But I think our biggest differentiator is probably the people that we have within the organisation. So the profile we've got highly experienced. So the head of sales, has lots of experience. We've also got a broader range of management as well to really kind of support clinics, works, and educate them not only clinically but also in terms of their business as well. So medical aesthetics, are businesses, so we can help support that whole portfolio and that whole patient journey through. So when a patient's first thinking about treatment, through into the website, through into being contacted, through into how the phone and inquiries handled, into the clinic, the waiting room, consultation, and then the treatment.
That's a big selling point. That's a huge selling point, because most pharmacies and manufacturers, they just make the product, they sell it on. They're not really thinking about the client to practitioner journey. So actually, as a practitioner, it'd be great to work with someone who actually can help filter in the patients coming into my clinic. I wasn't aware, any other pharmacies or manufacturers offer this?
Yeah, but I think it's down to the skill set of the team as well, and the knowledge of where they've come from. So within my past career, I was one of those business consultants at one of those manufacturers. So actually working with clinics on how to increase patient retention, how to increase new patients coming into the practice as well. So And we've hired a team of people who have that skill set as well, and we're educating them on.
Is that something that you do with personally, or is that more for the specialist sales team?
It's more for the broader team, but essentially you've got to understand how to support the team in delivering those, because it is a very challenging competitive market. You think about all the different manufacturing products, HAs there are.
Really overwhelming.
But certainly from practitioners' viewpoint, in terms of thinking about every one of those steps that a patient goes through to even access your business, is quite a complex process. And some of this is really about understanding who is a target demographic that the practitioner wants to work with, I think, is firstly, because I think a lot of practitioners can often go quite broad and try and think, I'd take any patient in their first instance.
Yeah, of course. And when you're starting off like that, I think that's perfectly natural. I think it takes time to eventually find your niche, find your demographic. But I remember when I first got started, I was treating 22-year-olds, I was treating 70-year-olds. It's anyone who comes into the clinic. And I suppose that's where knowledge of the product works really well, because the product for a 19-year-old might not be very good for a 72-year-old, for example.
Where did you find most of your patients were coming from?
It was when you start off, it's mostly just doing your own advertising. It's seeing family and friends, it's building up that profile. That takes quite a long time to do. And I always say, obviously, I teach and I meet a lot of new students, and they get quite worried and think, how do I grow my business? I always say for the first 2 years, it's just seeing family and friends, friends of friends, perhaps approaching salons or medical clinics and offering your services and building up very slowly. Of course, there's other things that you can do, like paid services, paid ads. That's not something that you can necessarily afford when you're first getting started. So I think, Google My Business is a great way to start because it's completely free. It's one of those things that when you move to a new area, you have to, if you were trying to find a new barber, you will type in a barber near me. Yeah. It's the same thing with a clinic. When a patient who is already converted and knows that they want to have Botox, for example, they just Google Botox near me and that clinic pops up. So there's all these little tips and tricks that you kind of start off doing, and that's how you bring clients into your clinic. Yeah. And then after that, as you get a little bit more established, then you go more into the world of ads and Instagram and YouTube and all of that sort of stuff.
Which products were you starting with originally? Was it?
Everyone always starts off with Juvederm. Everyone always starts. It's just the most famous one, and I think Juvederm is a good product. I've used plenty others. It's just about what you're comfortable with. And a lot of the students ask this question: what's the best product to start off with? In reality, a lot of people just try and use so many different products it can get overwhelming. So I always say, just pick 1 or 2 brands, stick with them. What's more important than the brand is the consistency within the brand. So for example, you need to know what's the light filler and what's the thick filler within a particular range, because a Juvederm Ultra 4 is very different to a Teoxane RHA2, for example. So yes, best not to get too overwhelmed with it. Yeah. Pricing is obviously something that you have to consider as well. The Juvederm products are a little bit more expensive, but they're also more well known, and patients tend to trust what they know. And I have plenty of patients who come into my clinic saying, I want Juvederm, because that's what they're familiar with. So I'd say Juvederm, Teoxane, Intraline, these are all good products to start off with. You have to be careful, of course, because you do get some dodgy people messaging you on Instagram or Facebook saying, do you want fillers for £10 a box? And to that, the answer is always no, just so you're aware.
Perfect. Well, yeah, within Sinclair, the HAs as well, we've got Miley. Which is
I've heard good things about Miley, yeah.
Certainly in terms of lifting capacity. We also have Perfecta as well, which is quite a little bit more of a cost-effective solution. But yeah, as you say, I think when you're building up your experience, trying different fillers or HAs is always quite good, and the level of company support is always critical as well. So at Sinclair, we also have Sam, who's our virtual product specialist as well. So she's accessible, I'll say 24 hours a day, but she would kill me for saying that. But she's got 20 years experience. She's available through our booking link, and also the digital education is also really important as well. So we've got Sinclair College as well, with huge amounts of educational content on there as well.
What sort of educational content do you have on there?
Anything from anatomy and physiology through to sort of product information, product demos, but also some of the business aspects in how you might look at building up your business as well. So all that kind of is funneled through into our virtual account management team as well. So we're always available to support and answer any sort of questions that you have as well. So,
Perfect. So we've spoken a lot about the injectable side of things. I'd love to know a little bit more about the most common devices, things like lasers, all of those sort of pieces of equipment. What's doing particularly well at the moment, and what do you think is going to grow the most over the next few years?
Yeah, so we've got quite a broad range of devices, and I've come in mainly on a career on the injectable side of things, and actually the devices is a really interesting space. So it's taking us a little bit of time to sort of build up our experience and expertise within clinics. If you think about the servancy and warranty of the devices, plus also the clinical aspects with the clinical training and how they use the devices. So within our portfolio, we have laser hair removal, so we have diode-based technology, but also we have IPL, so the more intensive pulse lights sort of treatments for more skin resurfacing and treatments like.
Okay, so let's say that I'm a practitioner who's relatively new to the industry. Devices can be quite expensive. Would you be able to tell us what would be a good device to start off with? Something that's cost effective, something that's relatively easy to use, not too technical, that our listeners can go out and start using today?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at devices, going back to the original question regarding trends, devices is a key aspect now. I think any large or growing medical aesthetic practice now has both a combination of injectables and devices. So it's always a tough question over which device should you look at. And I always ask the kind of question, going back to the practitioner, who's your target demographic? What are they sort of interested in? So who are you trying to target and what's their attitude and behavioural shift that you want them to make? So I think there's devices which can cost upwards of 150,000, or there's devices which can cost you 3,500. So I think the variance really kind of depends on what the type of patients you're looking to treat and what kind of things you're trying to resolve. So where we're working largely is medical aesthetic practices who have been injectables largely, and they're looking to bridge more into devices. So they're looking at more the sort of our prime laser device, which has sort of the diode laser hair removal technology, but also can do a bit of vascular work as well. So
excellent.
Because what happens is they've been turning away those patients for laser hair removal or other kind of options. So rather than
it's so painful to do that.
They might as well absorb them. So I think talking about the market more broadly, I think they're becoming more holistic in their full approach. So once you recruit a patient, you say it's quite difficult to recruit them initially. It's really about retention and making sure.
Couldn't agree more. I think 80% of my income is all from repeat customers. I do whatever I can in the injectables industry to try and keep them with me, whether it's simple things like being kind, listening to them, using smaller needles, using very good numbing equipment. All of these little things really make a difference. Now, I really want to get into the devices a little bit more, and I think what would be really useful for our listeners is to find out, you mentioned two products on either edge of the spectrum. So you have the ones that cost upwards of 150K and ones that cost 3.5. Can you walk us through a couple of examples of both and what those particular devices would do for those patients?
Yeah, so they're sort of in the sort of 2.5 range. We're looking at more like the microdermabrasion or infusion, where you're pushing sort of treatments into the skin as well.
So mesotherapy,
they're more sort of spa-based kind of treatments, which again, we see a lot more of those kind of coming back in as a combination treatment, so that they're offering a full patient consultation and therefore more frequent treatments over a period of time. So that's kind of the initial starting place, is something like like the microdermabrasion sort of treatment.
It's a great starting place, but in terms of the overall income that you're going to get from these, it's quite labor heavy, and then you're not necessarily going to get a huge amount for your time versus something like the more expensive devices. Tell me about one of those.
So we've got within our sort of our prime laser kind of our devices around about the sort of 30 to 55 mark. So within that we have sort of laser hair removal and sort of the diode-based technology, and also our IPL, which is coming in around about 45,000 for our, if you're looking to do more intensive, kind of broader range of rejuvenational treatments. We actually don't have devices up at the higher range, but you'll probably be looking at something more like sort of CO2 kind of, those really heavy kind of invasive treatments, which you really do need a good patient base who want that kind of treatments before you're looking at investing too heavily.
It could be a huge loss if you don't necessarily have the patients and you're forking out over 50 grand for it. But let's talk about, in terms of the patients who come in. Let's say I want to move forward with this sort of laser technology. I want to bring it into my clinic. Do I have to do any sort of different qualification? How long do these qualifications take? Can I teach others? Can I teach my employees to do it for me? How does all of that work?
So most of the people we're working with, they need a sort of level 3 or level 4 qualification within, if they're sort of a non-medic in that regard. So we work with training companies who, so if they buy the device that have that technology, we would offer the training course as part of that.
Excellent. Is that included in the price, or is that something that's extra?
Yes, it's all part of the service, because we need to make sure they're appropriately qualified
Yeah,
to
of course,
use the
of
devices
course.
and the machines. Obviously, if you're a doctor, dentist, or nurse, you have the higher qualifications, degrees, processes anyway, but we'll still advise it anyway, because the technology is different enough that it's worth going through and getting the qualifications.
Absolutely. Just because you're a doctor does not mean you magically understand how lasers work, for example. I know that I don't have much information on it, so I'd love to learn more about it as well.
But often that's most of the clinics we're operating have a team involved in that. So they, like you say, it's quite labour intensive. So it's often the therapists who might take on some of the treatments as well.
Okay, excellent. So in terms of growth into the future, we've talked a little bit about this already, but I really want to hone in on what are the aesthetic trends that you're seeing in the UK and Ireland, and how can our listeners best place themselves to be successful in this industry?
Yeah, it's always a tough one, isn't it? I think the trends are still very much more towards sort of regenerative medicine. So for me, I think that in our kind of injectable categories would be the equivalents of Lance, where you do get the instant polymerization, but also have the sort of natural aspect of the collagen moving forward. So I would still see this kind of combination of devices and injectables being really the kind of key driver within the business, is this combination approach. We've seen it, certainly blurring between the lines, I think, and it's just making sure that you're offering the full suite of treatments available for your patient demographic. So as to new technology and new innovations, we don't see a lot of new innovations within the laser space, but Sinclair have an exciting new product coming in Q2 2026.
Okay,
so,
can you tell us more?
It's all under NDAs,
Fine.
but it's
Fine.
kind of, if you think about the skin quality injectables aspects,
Yeah.
where you have the polynucleotides and exomes, this is its own sort of molecule now, which is quite exciting for us to be working on at the moment to bring to the market.
I will certainly be keeping my eye on Sinclair then. I'm excited to see what you guys release. Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an amazing conversation. I've learned so much, and we'd definitely love to have you back to tell us a little bit more about this new product. So, John, thank you so much for joining me.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Guys, I hope that this was useful for you. If you have any questions, please do comment below. If you feel like this will be useful for any of your colleagues, please do share to them as well. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.